Michael.
Good morning,
are you there?
Jimmy White.
Good morning, Michael. How are you today?
Great. Good morning, everybody else also that's on already.
Yeah, so we I'm very frustrated with Rumble. I hate to say this, but a little frustrating, that particular channel, because every time we go to do a show, you can't pull it into the StreamYard program. I mean, everything else I pull into the StreamYard program, once I've set it and scheduled it, we just go on and we're good. And Rumble isn't like that. Rumble, you have to go out and remember to set it up. And I didn't remember to set it up until just this morning. So it's hard, because then the people who are usually watching on Rumble are like, well, it doesn't look like there's going to be anything on this morning, because she's, so it kind of, Rumble frustrates me a bit. But we have another slightly frustrating thing. What happened, Michael?
What do you want to, which thing happened?
Well, what about our guest?
I mean, there's a million things happening.
Well, right now, our frustration is that poor Julianne can't make it today.
That's right.
So, God love her. She has 2 sick kids, 2 kids that she's got to school, and a husband who's out of town. And she's like, I don't think I can manage throwing up kids and kids that have to go to school and all of this without my husband home. And I'm like, gosh, I don't want to do that myself. So I completely understand. So Julianne will not be with us today, but instead we have our friend Whitney Mullica is here with us this morning.
Freedom fighter
Whitney. So I'm going to bring her in. Good morning, Whitney. What are you doing here?
Just saying hi. Here's Smokey. She's saying hi too, I guess.
That's so funny. I don't know what it is about cats, but one other guest cats does that, and I'm trying to think of who it is right now. Caleb Blount's cat's done that before. Yeah, and mine's done it. I don't know what it is about cats and wanting to be on, on the program, but they do. So, we have Tom Gann, Representative Tom Gann, who is the state's, what committee is it, Whitney? Do you remember it's States' Rights or State Committee?
State Powers.
State Powers Committee. Okay.
Yeah.
So Tom Gann had an interim study yesterday morning on license plate readers. And so after Julianne called and said, hey, I'm not going to make it, I thought, well, because Whitney and I had talked about going to the interim study yesterday morning, and both had other things come up. But we decided, well, you know what? Why don't we watch that, and then we can talk about the license plate reader interim study while we're on today. So all three of us have watched the license plate interim study yesterday with Tom Gann. Anybody out there who watched it, raise your hand. I can't see anybody, but I'm hoping that y'all are out there that watched
raising her hand.
The cat
She is.
The cat's like,
on me.
It was, golly.
It was
eye-opening.
It was provoking. It was literally provoking to me, Jenny. I mean, literally. I mean, we know how bad the surveillance state is. We're sacrificing security for protection. Or, I mean, we're sacrificing our freedoms for security.
Yeah.
And when I watched that, I mean, I was literally, even though you know that it probably goes on, but I know the clip that you have, the extent of the kind of interrogation within that clip is, I mean, it's just sobering.
Well, and even just the title of the interim study, it was named Surveillance Cameras and Warrantless Searches. So it's the erosion of our constitutional rights that scares me.
Well, and in so many ways. So I think the best way to do this is to just start. So I'll start and then you guys chime in. So Whitney and I both took notes. You were working on your car, Michael.
Well, I could have taken notes, but it would have been very messy.
Well, same way with me. I was making applesauce and putting up the apples. So I'd have to stop the video and write something down. But the point of the matter is, so he said that, now correct me if I'm wrong, because I was obviously doing three things at the same time. SB 359 was the bill that allowed surveillance cameras to catch license plates in order to follow the law of compulsory insurance.
Right. But that was it. It was only supposed to be for the compulsory insurance law.
So, guys, I have a question for you. Why do we have compulsory insurance law? Are you prevented? Let me ask this. Are you prevented from getting insurance against an uninsured driver?
No.
Okay, so nothing prevents you from doing that. So you, the individual, could go out and procure insurance, car insurance, vehicle insurance for yourself, and it would protect you from an uninsured driver. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So explain why, unless it's to sell insurance, unless we had some lobbyists from insurance companies show up and say, you know, we need this, why would we have a compulsory insurance law?
Well, I think you answered it. It's to sell insurance. But also, isn't it kind of interesting how the insurance department, or I'm not even sure if that's how they call themselves, the Department of Insurance or whatever, wasn't that designed to regulate insurance companies? And now it's regulating humans with mass surveillance.
There was a Reagan quote, and I don't remember what it is right now, but he basically said, if you let government get in the foot in the door, they'll take your whole house. And for years, so I've been working in legislation, writing in Oklahoma for about 18 years, something like that. Over the course of all of those many years, I have heard something that when I initially started, I was like, oh gosh, I don't even know what do I do? They would say, oh, well, that's just slippery slope. We're not talking about slippery slope. Slippery slope is a fallacy. And I would say something like, well, if we're going to get Common Core, then we're going to end up with a nationalized curriculum and I would explain, well, that's not true. That's just slippery slope. And I remember thinking, early on, I was like, okay, well, slippery slope. Okay, well, so that's not necessarily true. But you know what? If you could name one instance of us creating a law to do something that hasn't had a cascading effect into other areas, I'll reconsider. But for now, if you tell me slippery slope one more time, I may become violent and throat punch you. I'm just saying. Because clearly this case is slippery slope. Do either one of you have a dissenting opinion? I'm open.
Well, I will highlight the quote that Representative Gann put on his first slide that said that the things that will destroy America are prosperity at any price, peace at any price, safety first instead of duty first, which was a Theodore Roosevelt quote. And just to highlight one thing about Representative Gann, if I was on a sinking ship, I would want him on my lifeboat. He's a really good man. And I am so happy that he did this study and that he brought in the opinions that he did, because he brought in the guy from the 2A club, or the Second Amendment club. He brought in the ACLU. So I feel like he had some differing opinions, but I don't know how you could walk away from listening to that thinking that flock is a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I put on my Facebook immediately, stop the flock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
or we could say, what the flock?
Yeah.
What
For
the
people
flock?
that don't know, flock is the software and the camera system that reads the plates.
Yeah. Well, one of them, there are actually
Yeah.
several of them. And Gann was really good about talking about that. There are several of them, but yeah, the flock system is one of them. And I don't want to get too far ahead, but I will just say this. At the end, the ACLU guy read the contract that these police departments sign with flock. And you would think, and I'm not a police hater, so don't get me wrong, but I am going to tell you that I think the police have gotten to a point where they're so invested in safety that they quit protecting our rights.
Yeah.
So somehow they've now gotten, and this video that we'll show here in a second actually proves that. So,
and the ACLU guys said it really well too, that if you have these mass surveillance techniques going on all the time, you're treating everybody like criminals. You're not treating everybody like innocent people. Everybody is treated like a criminal. And so kind of going to what you're talking about with the police, and I'm not putting them all in the same basket. I think there's good people in every, institution, but in some ways I think that police officers have gotten to a place, and maybe it's a little bit of a response to what's gone on in the public and the way that they've been treated as well, but they kind of treat people a little bit more as guilty, a presumption of guilt instead of innocence.
So I was talking to my kids about this the other day because they came over to have dinner and we were talking about this. And, my daughter said, well, I don't get it. I mean, what's the big deal? And that's the problem. So let's make sure everybody knows this fact before we move on. So in the Constitution of the United States, you are considered to be innocent until you're proven guilty in a court of law adjudicated by your peers. That means that you cannot be treated as though you're guilty of doing anything. You simply cannot, because that was the one thing that set America aside from most other countries in the entire world. And that was the presumption of innocence. And then beyond that, we have something called due process. And you are not guilty until you've undergone the process, the due process. And that means that if somebody wants to search your home, if a law enforcement agency wants to search your home, they have to have a warrant to do that. And in order to get the warrant, they have to present evidence to a judge. And a judge has to say, based upon the evidence, I believe there's a presumption of guilt enough that we can issue a warrant to be able to search that premises or that car. You may not search a car without a warrant either. So I think the important thing that we have to understand today is that people don't know their rights. And it's all purposeful. It's all purposeful. We've taken all of this stuff out of public schools so that kids never really learn the Constitution in situ. They don't understand the parts of the Constitution so that it makes sense to them in the larger world. And so they just literally don't know what their rights are. And when a people doesn't know their rights, they're extremely easily led, and they can do anything. People in power can do anything to them. So now that I've said my piece on that, I leave the floor to you guys. But I mean, don't you agree that that's important and that people don't know their rights today?
Well, yeah, it's on purpose. I mean, like you said, it's like my kids, I closely watch what my kids learn in school. And when it comes to anything that's civic minded or anything, I mean, there's literally nothing. I mean, it's a literal joke.
Yeah, they're just it's so if you don't know it, then you either have to go find it out for yourselves or your parents. If the parents know, then the parents have to teach the children. But this is a real problem. So we talked
Keep
about
my little pocket Constitution handy just in case.
That's exactly right. The 5th and the 14th Amendment. You know, and the 5th Amendment expressly says you are to be secure in your home and your papers. And people don't understand what that means. Be secure in my papers.
Right. The 4th Amendment, yeah.
Oh, sorry, 4th.
Well, I think that's where it's kind of the line is blurred. You know, the founders could never imagine a security state, you know, a surveillance state like it is now. So the other side, they literally get these things passed because they're like, well, you know, we can't do illegal searches and seizures in your home and your physical papers and things, you know, so they get around that just through legalese, I think, in one way or another. Because I don't know if the Constitution necessarily protects our 100% right to privacy, you know, everywhere. I think it's more limited to just the illegal search and seizure in your property. That's how I take it, Jenny. That's how I see them spin the whole thing. Is they say, well, this is not your house necessarily. You're in public, so we have the right to surveil you in public.
I think technology outpaces the law.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
To our disadvantage.
I
definitely.
I agree. But you would think also, too, that the Constitution would just be ever lingering. And you would say, and by the way, the 5th Amendment is not incriminating yourself. And that's going to be an important one when we watch this video in a minute. So you can't incriminate yourself, which is part of the reason why they read you your Miranda rights, you know, to make sure, which that isn't right either. They should just tell you, I can't, you know, you have the right to an attorney. But the other thing is, I lost my train of thought.
Well, were you going to make a comment on what I said about privacy? Just kind of,
yes. Thank you.
House.
Thank you. Yes, I was. And what Whitney said with the fact that, you know, technology isn't keeping up. If you read the 4th Amendment, and Whitney, if you've got your Constitution there, I'm not sure, mine's over there. What exactly does it say about security in your papers? What does it say?
It says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
I don't see how that doesn't incorporate your person. I mean, you have papers and things on your person, right?
Well, it
So
does
that
say in your person. Yeah.
yeah,
In their person's, houses, papers, and effects.
yeah. So what you're saying, Michael, about the public still holds up. I mean, if you're secure in your persons, people can't just surveil you for no reason.
Well, but I think the Supreme Court, a long time ago, has already made rulings to that they can do that in one way or another. I mean, it goes back like 100+ years with case law, basically saying, yeah, they can surveil you, or they can do this or that. I mean, yeah, obviously, I agree 100%. There should be no surveillance of us, period, especially by the government. But I mean, what do you do?
Well, I think
Outside of inform people.
I think there's a two-pronged thing. One, we've got to inform people what their rights are. And then two, we've got to start pushing back against some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And in large cities and towns like in Edmond and Norman, I mean, I'm from a small city and town. You guys are in bigger cities and towns. You've got to start going to, and I know you guys do, but I mean, you've got to start going to the city and town meetings, and you need to say, hey, Edmond, you don't share any of the information that you capture on your citizens. That's wrong, and it needs to stop. So until the citizens address the issues where they start.
Well, and I think we have to face surveillance capitalism, and to face it, you have to know it's happening. And that's why I'm so glad that Representative Gann did this, because like I brought up last night before the news was talking about it, because they did bring it up about the flock cameras. I asked my husband, I was like, have you seen these flock cameras? And he's like, I don't no idea what you're talking about. And they're everywhere. And so we have to actually see it and acknowledge it in order to have any chance to stop it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important, and I think it's important right now to make sure that we differentiate between private individuals putting cameras on their businesses for protection.
Or their homes, yeah.
Or their homes. And compare that to government surveillance, because we're not talking about these people over here,
right?
Yeah.
The personal use. We'll put that down. We're not even talking about that. We're only talking about governmental use. So one of the things that Tom Gann said that I thought was phenomenal was you can't eliminate crime by causing crime, by creating crime.
Yeah.
By committing crime. And I thought, absolutely.
Well, let me make a comment on that, Jenny. Think about how long you've been on this planet. Not saying that you're old, but I'm just saying in retrospect.
You just
did. in retrospect, do you feel like you were safer 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago than you are now?
Absolutely.
And let's make no bones. This surveillance state is not about security in any way. It is 100% about data collection and money. And that's what it really comes down to. Because if they know every little thing that you do, where you go, your tendencies, this, that, your correlations, they can literally sell that everywhere, to every bidder. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So we're only getting, in my opinion, things are only getting more crime, more terrorism, less security. More security equals all these things, I should say. So that's just.
I heard someone today call it high-tech weaponry, and I think it's a good way to put it. And not that they're weaponizing it against us yet, but the implications of, okay, so you can look at my license plate and see if someone stole a car. Well, then can you track me when I go to a political rally? Can you track me if I go to a psychiatrist? Can you track me if I'm a dissenter against your public policy? That's where this all gets weaponized.
Well, but see, I'm going to push back. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, Whitney, because do you guys remember, oh gosh, when was it that the FBI was surveilling everybody's bumper stickers and that they put you on terrorist watch list if you had anything about the Constitution on the back of your car or anything like that. So I think they've been doing this probably since, well, way before 2010, but I remember that happening in 2010 with the Tea Party. Remember? And they were like, well, if you're, if you've got an anti-government sticker on, then, so I think they already were. And I think it became political a long, long time ago.
Well, think about this, Jenny. I mean, rewind even another 20, 30 years. Who were the bad guys that were coming back to the United States? All the veterans, the veterans back in the 70s and 80s, they were treated like they were the outcasts. They were the bad guys. They were the terrorists. They were the ones that were going to do this stuff. I mean, so it's been going on for a long time. It's just evolving. And now it's evolving, like Whitney said, with technology getting so fast, so advanced. These lawmakers and regular people, they have no idea about just how widespread and that net of surveillance really is.
And the FBI and the CIA and all of their alphabet soup agencies, I think they've made enough mistakes in the past that they would at least be a little bit more careful with this kind of technology. But you give it to a 24-year-old kid that just became a police officer, and he's going to track his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's something we need to talk about in a second, but I wanted to move on into so he talked about, Tom Gann specifically talked about, and thank you, Denise, and thank you for watching. He particularly talked about homeowners associations, and both of you know how much I detest homeowners associations. If there was a law that we could put out that would just quash every homeowners association in the known universe, I would be the first to sign up. These are absolutely the most Marxist communist garbage ever, and you should never be a party to these. But they've been putting up these flock cameras in housing additions. And what if you live in an HOA and you're like, I don't want to be surveilled by a flock camera. I have a Ring camera on my door. I don't care about what you're doing down the road. Why are you putting these in? Now, let me give you just something to think about just a tiny bit. So let's say that John Smith lives in a neighborhood that is under a communist homeowners association, and they go ahead and they put up these flock cameras. Well, John Smith, I mean, it may be questionable morals. Okay. He ends up not coming home one night, and he drives to his girlfriend's house in a different part of the neighborhood, and his car is there. Well, what goes on between John Smith and his wife is between John Smith and his wife. It's nobody else's business. However, John Smith decides he's going to run for Congress. Are you following me? These, who knows where this data goes that's been collected on these cameras. If you don't think a 13-year-old can hack into one of these stupid cameras, you need to have your head examined. Because it's not as though, oh, this is like super sound stuff and you're never going to be able to get in. That's a big crock. A 13-year-old can get into this software. I mean, anybody who really wants to can. So now you're being surveilled. And now John Smith, even though he may have questionable morals, is now having this data that was collected by his Communist Homeowners Association, CHOA. I like that. We'll just start calling them CHOAs. Collected by his CHOA. And it gets out into the internet. Now you tell me how right is that? You can't look at me and say, well, he has questionable morals. That's just, he shouldn't have been doing that. Bull crap. That's not an answer. That's not right. You can do whatever you want. It's between you and God. It's between you and your family. But you can't steal somebody's data. You can't catch somebody in their private business and then make it public like this kind of thing.
And our government should protect that for us instead of go the other direction. But I'll tell you, Jenny, we have 4 cameras in my neighborhood at every entrance. And at any point, if I want to, at any point, I can call one of the homeowner guys and say, hey, I want the cars that came in this entrance at this time. I want all the license plates that came in or out of the entrance at this time. And they'll just give it to me.
But I'm gonna push on this a little bit, because I think we're kind of bleeding into that private side of this, where if I chose to live there and I chose to be a part of that homeowners association, and some kids are going around and, you know, pulling door handles to see what they can get out of the cars, I think that's kind of more on the private side, where if I'm just driving down the interstate and you're collecting my data and you see what I mean? Like, we're blending into that private and public thing. And I think the private side of this, it's a little bit more permissible, because it's not the government. The difference is I can't go and put you in jail. The government can put us in jail.
No, and you're 100% right about that. But I just, you know, I feel like not everybody in a homeowners association is going to agree with that. But you're right. Let's get off of that topic, because you're correct about that. The
get off your choa.
Get out of your choa. Like, you can do that. Okay, so let's show the video. Are you ready to show the video? Okay, so let me make sure I can. There it is. All right, you ready?
And just for context, this video came from a guy who came up to Oklahoma from Texas, and he had to do a Freedom of Information request, I believe, to get this video.
Yeah,
he did, and you're 100% correct. Okay.
So he then stopped and asked to sit in the vehicle with the law enforcement.
Come up to see a friend? Yeah, so come up to see someone. You come up this way very often then? No. No? All right, you don't have any outstanding traffic tickets or anything like that? No. Okay, never been in trouble, never been arrested? No. You having a good day?
All right, let me. I think he's going on to the next one. Yeah.
The next video. Yes. Okay.
You don't come to Oklahoma very often?
Maybe west of
Sure. You didn't come up on March 10th? No? I'm just asking if you came to Oklahoma on March 10th. I don't know. Or January 20th? Or January 11th?
Oh, on the holiday.
Well, that's after the holiday. You don't come to Oklahoma very often?
He's got one more to go.
Yes.
Go ahead. You got plate readers?
I mean, yeah, there's some on the front of my car. So that's all I was asking. I mean, what, obviously you're coming to Oklahoma for something. Okay. Well, I mean, if I ask you come to Oklahoma very often, you tell me no, kind of, if you're going to lie, it kind of makes me think that there's other stuff going on than just, you know, just coming up to visit somebody.
January, March.
Okay. You stay for a couple days, or?
I don't know much there.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Because you're increasingly getting more nervous the longer this conversation goes, the more we talk about your travel to Oklahoma.
You're exceeding.
No, I'm not.
You got plate readers?
I mean, yeah, there's some on the front of my car.
All right, I think that's the last one in the clip, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was
Big
3.
Brother is watching you.
And the final one, number
Oh,
5, please.
No. Oh, hold on. Yeah, there was one more.
Especially with the increased nervousness. So there's nothing illegal in the car then? You're not coming up here to get anything or do anything you shouldn't?
Well, I never crossed the line, so.
Well, I beg to differ about that. But you didn't answer my question. Is there anything illegal in the car? Or any reason you're coming up here to get anything from Oklahoma to take back to Texas? Trained observers?
Yeah.
No, I'm just a cop. That's all I am. Something I'm supposed to be? No?
Okay, thank you. All right, so clearly the main point here is that his travels are recorded and being retained by law enforcement, and what seemed to be just a traffic stop of crossing the white line. It went a little bit further than what the individual had expected and was truly troubled by it. And so this is a problem, folks, that we have with this data that they are tracking, and they do have that recorded. And
Representative Gann,
yes,
if I can ask you on all that video, did they provide him the video of him crossing the line either?
He did not send me that. When he contacted me after our spring session, he just sent me the video, and this was the body cam of the law officer from that he requested, but no, he did not include that.
I just wonder if they have that too.
But if
They
you-
do not.
Oh, all right. So if you the video is 28 minutes long, and if you look at the end of the video, the conversation leads to a search of his vehicle. His vehicle is searched by the law enforcement officer, and so then at the end of the vehicle, end of the video, then comment, and don't hold me straight to the quote though, that he mentions to the other officer that had showed up that this individual would likely be mad. He used another word because he told the other officer that he truly stopped because of the fact that there was a tailpipe hanging low behind his car. So then it calls into question as to why he really stopped him, what he told him he stopped him for, and never really asked any more questions about his sobriety or anything. So I have that video if anybody else wants to watch it, but in answer to your question, no, we didn't.
So basically, the cop accuses him of lying, but then who was really lying?
And
it was
can I say
apparently
something really quick? When she asks, well, did he actually cross the line? You're missing the point. The point is they're collecting data on this man, and they know that he's been here in January and March. Who gives a crap if he crossed the white line?
I read that a little differently. And I read that the reason why Representative Crosswhite Hater asked that question is because she wanted to find out from Representative Gann, did he know if the car did actually cross the line, or did they pick him up just for something else? And I think she got that answer, which was apparently he just picked him up for something. Who even knows why that cop picked him up? I hope that cop is not on the street again, because it's when I listened to that exchange, I've been in situations where I've been confronted by police officers like that. They're not calm. They're not quiet. They have an attitude where they think that they're getting you on something, or they're going to get you on something. And that whole thing where he said, well, you're getting increasingly more nervous. And the guy tried to explain to him, because you've exceeded your constitutional ability to talk to me at all by this point.
Well, yeah, I think you'd be pretty nervous if someone's reciting the history of when you entered estate, right to you to the day, if not probably the hour. I mean, you get a little nervous and say, well, what else, does this guy know about me?
And thank God that was a well-poised person.
Yeah.
Because I'm with Jenny. Like if someone was treating me like that, it would be very hard for me to keep my cool. And then you just think about that in the context of how our society functions today. What if that would have been a 19-year-old boy full of testosterone and full of, just anxiety? Like that could have gone so bad.
But do you remember that later on in the interim study, Representative Gann made that point? He said, what you're doing is you're going to end up pushing somebody into a situation where it's not going to be good. There's going to be something happen, because there are kids who maybe they've done something bad, or maybe there's something, or maybe they have something. And they get nervous and they bolt out of the car, and then the guy shoots him for bolting out of the car.
Right.
And they didn't even really do anything. And Whitney, you told me a story the other day when we were talking about that girl that they put in jail.
So there's a book, and I would highly recommend, if you're going to engage with this, do it on Audible, because Malcolm Gladwell, it's called Talking to Strangers. The way that he puts this Audible book together, there's music and there's people actually speaking for themselves, and so you can actually hear the dialect going on between these two people. But I'm bringing this back from memory. It's been a minute, so I may not be 100% on, but basically this young woman gets pulled over, and I think she was on her way to a university or on her way back from a university, but she had some experiences with cops in the past that made her automatically just hyper nervous. And so she started smoking a cigarette while they're going through this whole exchange, and that made the cop mad. And so then the cop starts being aggressive towards her. Well, she ends up getting arrested, and for nothing. I mean, it was something as stupid as, crossing the white line. And she ends up getting put in jail, and she dies in jail. And she's only there for 3 days. But the reason that I think Malcolm Gladwell uses that story is it shows you these two people are communicating, but they're not hearing the same thing. There's a mismatch going on between their communication, and you actually get to hear his body cam, and you get to hear the interaction between them two. And it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, because the rage that you'll feel when you hear the way it all happens. And I kind of felt it again listening to this interaction with the cop that we just watched. And I'm not trying to blame the cops. I think that they've just been trained in a way that, for whatever reason, their default is people are bad. But yeah, I highly recommend Talking to Strangers. It's a very, very good book, and it will really change the way that you look at these interactions between police officers and people.
Well, I want you to let's look briefly at the militarization of our police force. Mm-hmm. So when you're in a position that your town's police department is buying SWAT vehicles, or buying, just in Tulsa, just recently, I saw a video of this new electronic dog that they just purchased. And the electronic dog is now somehow going to keep us safe. Is the electronic dog going to keep us safe, or is the electronic dog going to find stuff on us? I mean,
Did they name him DARPA?
DARPA.
Sorry.
I wish I had the video. That I should have kept it so that I could have brought it up. But when you have a police force that has equipment equivalent to your military, why? I mean, I realize that we're not in Mayberry anymore, and that Andy Griffith isn't sitting on your street corner, and, we're not going back. I'm not a moron. Okay. I get that. But I think what we've done is gone completely to the other side, where we're training police officers. And don't forget, Julianne and Michael, we've talked about this so many times. Nonprofit organizations come in now to train police forces. Police forces are trained out of state. They're trained with curriculum that comes from outside of the state, big curriculum. So basically what you have is you have a police force that's being trained to be militarized, that's trained to see people as encroachers, that's trained to see people as bad. And here's why you have to do that. When they want, the people, them, want to activate their system, and they want things to go south, instead of protecting the people, the police and the military have now been trained to see us as bad people, as the bad people. So instead of upholding our right against an encroaching government, they're going to be part of the government that is going to be taking over our rights and taking away our guns and doing whatever the government tells us to do, because they have been trained that way. No, not all policemen are like that. However, I've met enough policemen to hear what they have to say, to know that they get very defensive if you talk to them about certain things, and they'll get very defensive. Well, why are you getting defensive? What have I said? What have I asked you that makes you defensive? And so I think we have a right to be concerned about that.
But
Well,
Jenny,
and I think the 2A guy, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to make a real quick comment, because they're on their police car, it says protect and serve. Isn't that enough, Jenny? I mean, it says it right there on their car.
You mean the propaganda? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Whitney.
Well, I was just going to bring up the Second Amendment, the president of the Second Amendment Association, he said something at the beginning, about how he's very, very concerned about the incrementalism. And I think this militarization of our police force has happened in little tiny steps. And so we just haven't been able to see it. But then when it's right in your face, it's really alarming.
Well, and that's the way, this whole thing has worked. So again, I go all the way back to the stupid book Michael made me read. And, if you read The Killing of Uncle Sam, hey, put that back up again, will you? Put The Killing of Uncle Sam up one more time. If you read The Killing of Uncle Sam, you find out it started all the way back in the late 1800s. So it's not as though this country popped out of the box and just went full throttle toward, whatever it said in the Constitution. That's not true. There were people undermining our Constitution from the very first moment. And these are all these elitists that came to this country from England, and they wanted to control the system. And they were very, very patient. And that's the whole frog in the boiling water kind of thing that people talk about. They were extraordinarily patient. They've done this in incremental inches and centimeters, so that we haven't really noticed that it's happening. The next thing after he talked about, and let's make this clear. If you're in a situation like that, because we didn't get the video where the police officer came to the guy's car and said, hey, I saw you go over the line, and I have some concern about you being inebriated. I want you to come back to the car. So at that point in time, I mean, if he asks you to come back to the car, I don't see that there's any, I don't see there's an out necessarily from that. And I don't want to talk about sovereign citizens, not going to do it. If you go back to the car, however, and he doesn't give you a sobriety test, because that would be the first thing that I would say. Okay, well, if you're concerned that I'm inebriated, make me, give me a breathalyzer, or make me walk, or do whatever it is, but do one of those two things. But he didn't do that. He sat in the car. He started asking him these questions. The guy sounded like he was getting nervous. He wasn't getting nervous. He was just like, I'm in a situation now where I'm completely out of control. This cop is completely out of control. I don't know what to do, because like you said, Whitney, he has all the power. He can do whatever he wants to you at that point in time, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there is moments. I've been pulled over one time with a group of girls. We were going to the lake or something, but like where they pulled us over on the road, if we would have just stayed there and the cop would have done everything outside of the car, it would have put him in danger. So he actually did have us come and just sit in the car just while he did all the tests and, ran everything. I don't even think he gave us a ticket. I think he gave us a warning. But I think that there's situations where we've got to make sure our police are protected as well, and they have to be safe as well. And it's just towing that line of, and I think the guy in that video did a really good job. Like, he did not get aggressive. He didn't get, and I'm talking about the guy, not the cop, but he didn't show how obviously disturbed he was. He was disturbed enough to go and get a freedom of information request. So it obviously shook him up. But I think there's a balance there. And the same thing goes with this, like, mass surveillance. Like, we have to balance, how do we keep the public safe, but we still keep our privacy rights. And, one thing that Dawn Spencer also said was that sometimes we have, like, very specific needs. So if there's an Amber Alert, if my kid gets stolen and you want to read a license plate to find them, great. That's great. Like, find the kid, find the silver alert. There's specific times where I don't think this is necessarily an evil thing. It's just this dragnet approach of, let's monitor everybody all the time for no reason. That's a problem.
But again, what concerns me, though, Whitney, and it's not that I don't completely disagree with you. However, I will say that if I were in that situation and it had been me, I would have said, sir, I don't see what this has to do with your concern about my alcohol consumption. I would have asked some questions to do that. And had he, suggested that they search my vehicle, I would have said, sir, I'm not going to allow you to do that without a warrant. Right. I think you can say these things. I don't think you have to scream, I'm a sovereign citizen. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And I've seen plenty of videos like that. Just be calm and say, sir, I disagree with this. I feel like my rights are being violated at this point in time. And if you would like to give me a breathalyzer, I'm perfectly open to that. But I'm not going to allow you to search my car without a warrant. And I think if you don't do that, okay, you can get the camera, you can do an open records request for the body cam footage, and you can go get an attorney. But why would you do that when you might have the opportunity to educate this police officer as well, or at least talk them back, or at least remind them of the Constitution and say, hey, I'm sorry, but I feel like my rights are being violated. And if you'd like to give me a breathalyzer, that's fine. But I'm not going to allow.
It would have scared the hell out of me if I was sitting with a cop and they're like, hey, you were driving on this road on this, and this date. That's terrifying.
It is. I'm not going to say it's not. I'm just saying that at some point we're going to have to push down that, because what's the worst that they could do to you? I mean, I guess they could shoot you, but at some point he's wearing a body cam and somebody's going to get him for it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, unless he falsifies the body cam, which of course,
they put you in jail. And I mean, look at how irresponsible our jail systems have been. We've seen story after story recently here in Oklahoma about people, for mental health crises going through the system and having terrible consequences. And I think that's like the real fear that people have when it comes to cops is, I don't want to get shot, of course, but I also don't want to get thrown in jail for no reason because we have differing personalities and we're not matching up well. And that's going back to that Talking to Strangers book. It's so good at making me understand, at least, that sometimes when we're having conversations with people, I'm over here and you're over here and we don't even realize it.
Yeah. Well, and yeah. Whatever it is, I would suggest that you calmly stick up for your rights. That's my suggestion. And if you don't feel like you can do that, then fine, go along with it. And then freedom of information request the body cam footage and get an attorney and sue them. But at some point, you can't just let them do this and get away with it. I mean, that's a big no. because that just empowers them to continue to do that. Because that same cop, I mean, until he gets brought up on some kind of charges, he's going to do that again.
But I don't think the cop as an individual is the problem. I think the flock is the problem. Because how would he have even said any of that stuff to that guy if it weren't for the technology that gave him the information that this guy had been in Oklahoma on those dates? The technology is, in my opinion, that's the problem. That individual cop is just going along with the technology.
But Whitney, that removes the cop's ability or not to use information that they shouldn't be using for a traffic stop. So no, that technology is out there, but that cop should never have used that technology for that traffic stop. Period.
Exactly.
So that's on the cop. That's not just because you have the technology out there. It's kind of like saying, I have a gun and my gun shot somebody. I mean, that's exactly what that argument is. My gun can't shoot anybody.
What if we don't know the process? I mean, what if when he types the guy's credentials into his laptop, that's the first thing that pops up that says, hey, you were here, there. Here's your history. You know, I mean, what if the cop does? I mean, do you think, Jenny, is he just supposed to kind of bypass that and just say, you know, maybe he shouldn't mention it to the guy? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's
absolutely not. That wasn't even what he stopped. And I think any attorney would say, and for sure the ACLU would say, you can't stop somebody saying one thing and then turn it into something else.
But I think Michael's making the point that we don't know what he was trained to do. And so if we have municipalities engaging with these technologies and then training their people how to use them, we don't, and I think that's a good question, honestly. You know, what do they tell these police officers when they put these systems into place? How does all that work? And why is it not something that's more transparent for the public to know it's a problem?
Yeah, they're just selling protection and security, saying this is going to better the department and better, you know, keep people safe. And
flock in their BS statistics about how they're catching 10% of the criminals and blah, blah, blah. I loved when the ACLU guy was like, that's kind of just lying through statistics.
Well, but here's the other part of the coin that we touched on, but we didn't really get to, and we're already in an hour. So I want to make sure we go through this fairly thoroughly. So the point was made that when you collect this data, that data, it depends upon the police agency. So for example, Edmond was brought up in the city of Edmond was brought up in this particular interim study. And people were told that Edmond refuses to tell anybody who asks where the data that they collect on their flock cameras goes. So if you're in Edmond, you're just like, so my stuff's being collected, but I have no idea where it goes. Other agencies have released that data and it goes to the FBI, the CIA, the OSBI, the what were some?
They said they could even sell it to foreign governments.
That's right, to foreign governments. So if part of our concern right now, which it is, if you're not aware, our biggest concern right now is the fact that as a part of the WEF move to 2050, they're taking all of the ability for us to regulate our governance away from us. So we can't go to our elected official and say, you know, hey, we need to stop this, or hey, we need to stop that, because they're trying to move that all away to agencies, usually 3- and 4-letter agencies that don't have any responsibility to the voter directly. So when you think about that, if the ATF, for example, the ATF gets your information, okay, and you're stopped and you legally have constitutional carry in Oklahoma, and I can have a gun in my car with or without a permit, I can have a gun in my car. And I say, as I'm supposed to say, officer, I have a gun in my car. So now all of that information gets sucked back into the ATF database. And now the ATF knows that I'm driving with a gun in my vehicle, and I can't make that go away because that's not an agency to which I have any say over it. It's a bureaucratic swamp agency that holds me like this out here, and I have no ability to regulate that. That's a huge problem.
Well, and then another thing that the guy from the ACLU, I think I said that right, that he said that was a big problem is that the Flock database, when they run their hit list or hot list, I can't remember which one it was, but they're basically taking, your license plate. And then if you are on the hot list, then they notify law enforcement. Well, he said that they're relying on the National Crime Information Center database, which has an exemption from the 1974 Privacy Act to comply with having reliable and complete data. And so they don't even have to have the right data. So all of a sudden, let's take that same situation. You get pulled over off of a faulty NCIC hot list, and then you're dealing with the aggression between two human beings who just can't communicate very well. It's so dangerous. And the other thing, going to like the UN 2050 thing, in the contract that these municipalities are signing up on with Flock has a worldwide license to all the data they're collecting. So right now it may just be getting shared between Edmond or, whoever Edmond's contracting with, but that could go anywhere or be hacked. I mean, it's very, very risky for our privacy and our individual freedoms.
Well, I want to make a scenario to you guys. Did you go look at Flock's website at all and look at their products or anything? Because they also have a gunshot detector that detects any kind of gunshot within a certain mile radius. Well, think about this. The gunshot detector goes off. Immediately, they know every single car that's within the radius of that. What's stopping, the FBI or someone from coming to every single one of the houses, to find out who shot a gun or this or that. So that's just the start. I mean, that's just the very start of, where this technology is going to take us. And then I wanted to make a comment on, okay, so Jenny, you mentioned the whole Edmond deal, and Whitney's talking about the sharing of information, what they may know, not know. I'll just give you an example. So Jenny, that how I refused the smart meter at my house.
Yeah.
Okay. So Edmond came out. They had to rerun a whole new line to my house and do the whole new deal. Okay. So like literally from the transformer to my house, I had to set up a whole separate deal because I completely refused the thing. So I was talking to one of the guys. He introduced himself there at my house for 2 days, doing all this work. One of this one gentleman, he was one of the head guys. There was only 2 people that brought the entire smart meter system into Edmond. One of the guys was at my house. So I talked to him for an hour, and he literally, he loved it. He praised it. Yes. From the city of Edmond's standpoint, they can pinpoint, issues, and it can be more efficient. They can, they can do their job better to repair the lines and this and that. But he had no idea. Because he said, because I was asking him about the data side, and he goes, well, we don't collect any of that. We don't even have access to any of the data. All we get is basically, these 4 or 5 parameters, and that's it. And so we talked for a while, and I told him, I said, well, literally, I said, that this meter has over 200 different data points that it collects and sends out. And still, to the point, he's like, well, we don't have access to that. I was like, exactly. I said, who has access to that? Where is all that information going? I said, you have no idea. I said, yes, you at the city of Edmond, you may not be collecting all that data, going through it, whatever. I said, but somebody is. I said, that is the point of this whole thing. So like to what Whitney was saying, these law enforcement agencies, they probably have no idea the true capability, the true side of what is being collected, where it's going, who it's going to. They're just being sold, hey, this is a camera to help protect your community, this or that. It's just going to record license plates and that's it. There may be another 500 different data points collected through these systems in one way or another that we have no idea who or where it's even going or who's getting it.
Well, yeah. And the one thing that I wanted to point out too was the fusion center. So they talk about this fusion center, and I need to have somebody on, because if you want to talk about an absolute suck of your rights and liberty, it would be this freaking fusion center nonsense. And the fusion center is just a place where all of this data, like police data and all of the letter agencies, all of this data comes together so that you literally have a digital footprint of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a dossier. So who does that?
Or a control
China.
file.
China does that. It's
Hillary
what
Clinton.
was it? And Gann said that in the it's one person, one file is what China says.
Yeah.
And don't forget, China has all of this technology, the flock type technology, and they follow people around all the time. And that's where they get your ESG score. Oh, I saw you buy the wrong kind of laundry detergent. Tisk, tisk, tisk. You know, it sounds stupid, but that's actually what's going on. And if you look, there's all this talk about you have to have by March of 13th, I think of next year, you have to have this real ID if you're going to get on a plane anywhere. If you
Which is nonsense. If you have a passport, you don't have to have real ID.
If you love America, you will immediately contact your legislator and tell them to make this stop, because stupid red Oklahoma and our little red legislators have led us down the little yellow brick road of data sharing infinity, so that now we have to have a real ID. And this should all be stopped. This is absolutely wrong. It's completely wrong. It's tracking individuals. But I think the problem is, our driver's license may already be a real ID. And if somebody knows about this, please let me know. We'll have you on the show. We'll talk about it, because I want to be wrong about this. So Dave and I just got back from a, we had a nice long vacation driving through the southern part of Utah and doing all the national parks. Well, we ended up in Las Vegas and flew home from Las Vegas. Well, I had my boarding pass, Southwest. I had my boarding pass in my hand. When I go up to the counter, what is it? The kill all your liberties to tell people that you have security agency. Isn't that right? Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So I went up to the TSA. We've got to come up with another. Anyway, the TSA agent said, "Can I have your driver's license?" And I said, "Okay." So he takes my driver's license. He puts my driver's license in a card reader and he goes, "Okay, have a great trip." But my boarding pass is right here. I mean, what's going on? What do you mean? Huh? So he literally took my driver's license. And if you've noticed, when you go to the grocery store and you buy beer, yes, I buy lots and lots of beer.
Jenny, have you been through customs in the last couple of years?
No, I haven't, because I won't go out of the country for right now.
They literally scan your face.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that up, Whitney. So when I left Oklahoma to go to Salt Lake, because I flew to Salt Lake to see my sister first before we did that. When I left Oklahoma, so TSA, there was a huge line. It was really busy. The lady goes, "Step up." So I stepped up. She took a picture of my face. Mm-hmm. She didn't ask me, "Can you take a picture? Can I take a picture of your face?" She didn't say anything. She didn't ask me for my driver's license or anything. And I was just kind of freaked out about the whole thing. And then I realized later she didn't take my driver's license because she did facial recognition on me. And I got so pissed after the whole driver's license thing in Vegas that I called my friend Josh Burkeen, Congressman Josh Burkeen. And I said, Josh, this is what happened to me. He was like, no, that didn't. And yes, it did. So he put me in touch with a guy because he sits on the TSA committee. So he put me in touch with a guy in his office who is the liaison to the TSA committee. And I told him, and he said, really? Are you serious? And I said, absolutely. That's exactly what happened to me. He's supposed to be looking into it. I need to get back with him and just check to see, where he is
Well,
on this.
Don't forget. And I just finished reading this book called The Imagineers, and it's all about DARPA. But the internet began as ARPANET, and we all consented to all these social media things. I don't think we did, and I don't think we had informed consent, but we did consent to all this social media stuff. And I remember maybe like 5 or 10, probably 10 years ago, whenever Facebook would start automatically recognizing people so you could tag them. And, it seemed like an innocent, benign thing back then, but this biometric security state has been coming in increments.
It has been. But here's the thing. We can't just say, oops, well, we already have it. We're going to have to start pushing back. I mean, and I think what Representative Gann did, and guys, I just urge you, I'm going to get off of here and send him a note and just say, thank you so much for what you did. And I would like to say, Denise Cross-White-Hader, who's chairman of that committee, was the one who chaired it. And I thought she did a great job. So thank you, Denise, for doing that. It was great. You did a great job. We've got to keep this on the front burner because we've got to stop this real ID. Somehow we have to stop it. Somehow. Do you realize that our driver's license are now a biometric record? You have to put your thumbprint on that stupid thing.
Well, and Jenny, let me bring up one thing that comes back to the very beginning, that technology is outpacing the law. And I think one of the reasons that Representative Gann wanted to do this study so much is because our court systems are still coming back and saying this is inadmissible as evidence with the flock camera recordings. And so actual criminals are getting away with things because our courts are saying you're violating the Fourth Amendment. So we've got to have some sort of reconciliation between the law and technology. And I will give the creator of Flock one piece of credit for just a moment. His name is Garrett Langley, and he sounds like a really nice guy. He's a young kid. I listened to a little thing that he did with his, it was like a podcast, but he was talking about how his mom is like his right hand in the business. But what he said that actually did make sense to me is police officers are retiring a lot faster than they're hiring. And so there is this void that's being created with our law enforcement agencies. And who wants to go be a cop right now? I mean, just the climate of being a police officer is really not that great. And so what he was saying is that this technology, he was trying to create it to help the police officers. Do I think that it's a great thing? No. Do I think that we need it in our state? No. But we also need to have a culture and a climate where the public and law enforcement can get along well and see each other as like a symbiotic relationship. And so I think the law needs to catch up with the technology. And what you were saying about if you're in that situation with a police officer, they just need to be reminded that the Constitution is a restriction of government to keep us free, not to make the government more powerful.
Yeah. Well, if I can, Whitney, I think guys like him, they have the best intention. Yes, maybe law enforcement is not hiring like they're exiting, but there again, that's playing right into that 2050 plan of replacement. We're replacing humans with technology, and that is the whole problem in a nutshell. I mean, I know he probably has the best intentions. He's probably a good kid, the whole 9 yards, but he's helping create that system that is going to be there's no empathy in an AI type of system, and there is in a real police officer. So, like to your point, Jenny, maybe you could have educated that police officer to say, hey, You know, we're still human. We have rights. This country was built on this. You don't have to utilize that kind of technology in this kind of stop, you know, but that's, to me, that's the major issue, is that replacement of us as humans in our jobs, you know, just across the board.
No, you're 100%. That's 100%. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is correct, because technology doesn't have the ability to be able to look at you and say, I don't think so, or have a further conversation like you're saying, Whitney, to try to get to a point of understanding. It doesn't have that. And so how do we really end up losing all of our rights at the end? By having some autonomous person who says, I'm sorry, I feel like that's a right, you know, and then you're okay, we're done here, you know. So I do think, I'm just trying to look up, guys, was there anything else on this? I'm looking at my notes
on the presentation.
Yeah, was there anything else that we missed?
I think we got through most of it.
I thought he did an absolutely fantastic job. I mean, it was really to really sit down and watch that and really listen to it. I mean, it was pretty riveting.
Oh, and I loved what Chris Banning said. We forgot to mention what Chris Banning said at the end. So Representative Chris Banning apparently does this stuff. That's his job. I had no idea that's what he did. That
surveillance technology.
Yeah, security personnel, a security person. That's what he does as a job. And he was saying, it doesn't matter what you require in the law, they can do whatever they want. And I remember him saying that and thinking to myself, oh my goodness, wow, but that's true. So think about it. You can, because the ACLU guy kept talking about guardrails. Well, you have this, but we need to put these guardrails on, and that's what's really going to help, you know, in the end. Well, you can have these guardrails, but if you've got a 18-wheeler, what does a guardrail matter? Right? I mean, if it's physics, it's the 18-wheeler is going to go right through the guardrails. So if you have somebody who doesn't want to follow the guardrails, because they mentioned that they've already caught like police officers surveilling ex-wives or ex-girlfriends or whatever with this particular system. And you're like, okay, that's just not okay. And
they asked him, they were like, how many, have there been a lot of instances of people using these for corrupt, you know, practices? And he said, there's too many to count. And he said something that I thought was pretty good. You don't need a hand grenade to kill a bug when a fly swatter will do. And he was very objective in the interim study. But if you just Google ACLU flock, they have a very, in what I saw, just looking at it, they have a very hard stance against this kind of technology.
Well, because I think it's too open-ended, just like what they said. I mean, well, and then there was a point, and I wrote this down. If Maine gets the data from the ALPR system here in Edmond, for example, we have no control how that data is used. So however Maine is using that data, we don't have any control over that. And yet that's the stuff that, you know, that's personal to ourselves and our papers, as we said in the Fourth Amendment. And
let's say what ALPR. So ALPR is the automated license plate readers.
Right. ALPR technology. So Denise asked, what's the link? I'll tell you what I'll do. I will put it in here right now. And then if you're on Facebook or one of our other, here it is right here.
You're going to want to click on the one that says state powers. And then it should say something like,
well, you have to go to new recordings. Let me see if I can get a specific. Oh, hold on. I've got a specific URL for it here.
All right. It is 8:30 and you have come.
Perfect.
All right. I have a specific URL. So here it is right here, Denise, and I'll stick that in with other things. It's not going to help me to show it. But if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can go directly and grab the link and then click right on that directly. So, and I definitely would do that so that you can watch it, because there are so many ways in which Oklahoma is so far down the road to the WEF 2050 agenda. If I were to sit here and talk to you about it right now, you would probably freak out, because I'm not a super freak out person. I'm pretty much beyond the freak out stage. That's how bad it is. And if
Jenny,
we
don't say it so. This is a red
I can
state,
prove
Jenny.
it. I can prove it.
We're
So
in
it
the
doesn't
Bible
really...
Belt, Jenny.
I know. But I think if we don't really start pushing back against this stuff, and if we don't start, remember, we all started this in the first place because, God said, my people perish for lack of knowledge, and you better go out and start teaching people stuff. So that's what this is all about. So, but the problem is, we can bring this to you. We can teach this to you. We can show it to you. But if you do nothing about it.
And let me just point out that the Flock is a Georgia-based company, and our governor has a lot of ties to Georgia. And I tried to see if I could find anything, and I couldn't. But if any of your listeners get curious, I would love to know if Governor Stitt has any connection to this, because he's very tyrannical.
Well, I think it comes out as tyrannical, but I personally feel like he's just more he has a very small bubble, and he wants the state to operate as a business, and businesses don't have to worry about people's rights or what happens later on down. Stephanie, I will keep screaming about it. It's true. And she's right. You are right. We have got to keep screaming about it. And showing up at these things and, talking about them. But I think Governor Stitt basically he is all about business. He's all about making money. He's all about all of that. And he sees the state as a business. He doesn't understand government. He doesn't understand the rights of the people in government. So he just does whatever he feels like is right for business at the time, because that's why he believes we elected him. Mm-hmm. We elected him because there wasn't anybody better. Really, Joy Hoffmeister? You're never given good choices in this state. It's either worse or worser. It's not like, because we had some great, candidates to start off with, but by the time you get to the general election, you're stuck with whatever you've got. And unfortunately, all of the people who are on here this morning, you deserve our love and respect and thanks. And thank you. Seriously. And we love you very much for tuning in and paying attention to this stuff. But you got to spread it. You got to spread it, because there are more people in this state that are completely uneducated on all of this stuff than there are who are. And until we catch up to that,
we'll keep getting the leaders we have.
Yeah.
Doctor, why does it hurt when I do this? Well, stop doing that. It's so much easier than we want it to make it out to be, but we gotta work at it. So, all right. Anything else, guys? We managed to.
Well, yeah. Let me give you another little state.
Oh, sure.
Let me give you another little state instance of security.
Okay.
So, I asked you guys if you knew what the I asked you if you knew what the Stingray device was.
Oh, that's right. You were going to talk about this.
And neither one of you did. That's basically, it's a device that law enforcement has, and
let's make it clear, another device law enforcement
this
has.
is technology that's outpaced, because this is years ago. This is at least probably 8 to 10 years ago when these devices came out. But anyway, in a nutshell, what the Stingray device does, it mimics a cell phone tower, so that now whoever's operating it can have access to your phone, the tracking, your information. They can record whatever. It's the same thing that goes through there. Well, the ACLU, this is an article back in 2018. The ACLU at that time had already identified that Oklahoma had these simulated cell phone towers at the state level. So it can go all the way down to your local police department or sheriff or whoever. But ultimately, this is how it even got found out. Okay. So there was a computer hacker guy that was literally in the early 2000s. He was hacking in and filing false tax returns. And he got hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they're trying to figure out how to catch this guy. Well, this was an article in Politico. And as you go through there, this hacker, he basically, they finally catch him. And when he goes to court I can't remember what year he goes to court. It's early. It may be like 2010 or 2012 or something like that. When he goes to court, he proves in court that the police were tracking him through his cell phone. He's the one that brought all this to light. Otherwise, you would have never known about it, because this guy proved in court that they were tracking him because he's a hacker. So he knew that there was somehow that they were following him. So that's how it even came to light. But in that other article, the ACLU, that was 2018. That was back in 2018 when the state was already doing this. So think about at the airport, at like major thoroughfare intersections, when you come in or out of the state, they could have a device there. They could have one of these devices. They're portable also. They could have one of these devices. You get off a plane here at Will Rogers, you turn your phone on, boom, you're right into the very first thing you're into is one of these devices. So you have no idea.
What's that? What are the hatched states?
That's those are at the state and local. So your local police departments. So Texas at this time had state police cell site simulators and local police have cell site simulators.
And so we just have them at the state level.
Well,
and
that
then
was in 2018. Don't forget, this map is 2018.
Oh, it is. It's not updated.
So this is probably.
Can I just point out that little old red Oklahoma, we're so conservative. So that was back in 2018, and we have this stuff.
Yeah. And you were crazy ahead of that time ever saying, that the government probably has these, these cell interceptor sites. But they're called Stingrays. I heard about them a long time ago. And, what else do they have? Whitney, what else is that technology available to that we don't even know about? I mean, that's what's scary.
Well, we could have a whole nother hour and a half conversation about things like Promise and Palantir and all that, but we'll save it.
Oh, Peter Thiel.
Peter
Thiel's
Well,
wolf in sheep's clothing, in my opinion.
Dude.
So Jenny,
Do what?
He's saving the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Oh no, Jenny, I wanted to ask you something. So you made a joke recently about how we're becoming a banana republic. And so I Googled Banana Republic and just a bunch of clothes came up. So can you explain that to me?
So a banana republic is it's kind of a pejorative term, which isn't very nice, but it's a way to explain countries usually that are tropical in nature, hence bananas, that don't have a strong government or protective rights for individuals. So usually some kind of a third world government. So that's what most people mean when they talk about a banana republic. It's not a republic in the sense that I was going to say have a republic, but we don't anymore. So we're theoretically have a republic. It's not that same kind of thing. It's more a third world, country kind of pejorative. And that.
Like a republic in name only.
Yeah.
Republic in name only. Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Well, I again, I am so grateful that everybody was on today. We had a nice audience today, and I'm so sorry that Julianne wasn't here for you. We will get her back.
Yeah.
So because we've got to know about carbon credits, it's just gonna, help with the article that we've got coming out, hopefully by the end of the week. But I think the best thing that we can do, is besides pray, I mean, which honestly should be at the forefront of our minds every day. But I think what we need to do is we need to reach out to people that we kind of know in our circles, but that we may be a little uncomfortable with. We're not really sure where they stand on particular issues. And one of the things I don't think we do is have conversations with these people about things, because we don't want to get into an argument, or we don't want to make somebody, mad and I understand all of these things. I mean, I talk about this, and my family, my family is like, but you're an entirely different animal. You're like 1 in 10, 1 in 100 people, who and I get it. I mean, I have that kind of personality. I get it. And not a lot of people do. I don't mind confrontation. I don't mind talking about things that are uncomfortable. All of these things are things that I don't have a problem doing, but that other people do tend to have a problem with. And I understand that. So please don't think when I say things, I'm like, you got to do it too. I get it. But don't do nothing, though. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you may not be me. You may not be the person who's sitting in the back of the police car and going, tisk, 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 officer. I mean, I get that may not be you. But on the other hand, you could say something like, we know, to a friend that you maybe doesn't have the same stance that you have on things. I was just reading something the other day, or I saw this video about this, and I thought, what do you think about that? So if you do nothing, nothing happens. I've said this 100 times. It's like my mantra. If you do nothing, nothing happens. But if you do something, something may happen, and something good may happen. But we're not at the point in time where you can do nothing. We blew past that probably 50 years ago, frankly. And we're coming down to the wire. So you're going to have to do something now. And how you choose to do it is your personality. But you got to do something. Am I wrong? Help me out, guys.
I agree.
You're
just leaving me hanging here.
Michael, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was. When you were just saying that, I was going to find a video here quick to play.
Did you see what Laurie wrote? Nothing changes if nothing changes. That was my campaign. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. But that's so true. It's true. Funny.
Well, when you were saying all that, Jenny, just popped into my head that scene from The Network back in that movie from the 70s where
I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yeah, he figures out all this stuff going on and just right in front of him. He's like, and he just goes off. I was going to find a clip of that and play it, but it's too long.
Is it too long? I should put that on. I should just put the clip of him screaming out the window, I'm mad as hell.
Yeah.
Because
you can tell everybody look it up, but it's just The Network. I'm mad as hell. Just look that video up and just watch it. It's so, it's right on. It's 100% right on. But I wanted to give just one little quick analogy, and Whitney can probably, since she's in finance, she can probably really relate to this. When you were talking about the book, Killing of Uncle Sam, and how long ago these processes, and we've been fighting for our liberties. When you look at, and I'll just kind of put these things in perspective. So you have these large organizations, these globalist kind of people, they make long-term plans. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to change everything tomorrow. So The way I explain it to my kids and a lot of people, it's like, think about the way people make money and invest money. If you're just a guy that's making, that's getting paid minimum wage, and you're just trying to get, through the end of the week, by getting a couple extra hours here or there. You're not thinking about investing in some major, part of your life 20 years from now. You're just trying to make it to the end of the week. So when you're on minimum wage compared to salary, compared to someone that actually invests money, minimum wage guy's thinking about today or tomorrow or this week. A salary guy, he may be thinking a year or two. What am I going to do here? How much money do I have? Can I build that pool next year? Something like that. People that make their money from investments, they're thinking 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And that's the difference in the planning. A lot of us, we're just trying to survive every day. We can't think about 10 years from now or plans 20 years from now. But the people that do, these globalist type of people, they don't have to worry about today or next year. They can make plans on a long range scale, just like an investor looks 10 years from now or 20 years from now. Where's his estate going to be 20 years from now, or when my kids take over, 30 or 40 years from now? That's their mentality. It's that same mentality. That's how they can lay these plans out in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s that come to fruition, 50 years later. So it's that slow kill of our rights. It's going so slow, we don't realize that it's just a constant eroding of our freedoms and liberties, because it's so slow, we don't see it. It's just mind numbing.
What happened to Whitney?
She might have froze.
I don't know. No, you're 100% right. And it's important to remember, I mentioned the Cloward Piven strategy the other day on my Facebook page, and it went viral. And I was like, wow, that's very weird that people
what does that go back to? Like the 70s?
I think it was 68.
Yeah.
I may be wrong. Don't quote me, but 68 sticks in my head, that they actually proposed it. And basically, if you don't know what the Cloward Piven strategy is, they were trying to, and Stephanie says, humanity will be at its best if we lift each other up. I love the all boats will rise, tenet. I believe that that's true. But Cloward and Piven were socialists, and they believed, and I think they still are. I think they're still alive. I don't remember. But anyway, they wanted to have a national minimum wage, basically. And so they felt like the only way to get to the national minimum wage, they proposed a strategy. And the strategy was that they were going to, bless her heart, she got knocked out. She's trying to come back in. We'll get her on. There she is. What happened to you?
My internet just shuts off like 4 or 5 times a day.
Or somebody shuts it off. Let's think about this in the right light, shall we? But Whitney knows about Cloward Piven. We were talking about another aspect of Cloward Piven, and I'll let her talk about that in a second. But the whole idea was, if their thought process was that if you create so much chaos in the welfare system, that it would collapse, and then they would have to put in a national minimum wage, because then that was the thing that was going to be able to safety net everybody, and that would solve it. So their whole plan involved creating enough chaos in a system to completely destroy the system. And the reason why I brought that up after what you were saying was, we're in a situation now, and we have been in for a minimum of 20 years, for the last 2 decades for certain, where we've been so inundated in our work lives and our home lives and with the healthcare system and with this and that and the other thing, that all we're trying to do, all the basic person is trying to do, is make sure we have enough food coming in for the next meal, making sure we have enough food coming in for making sure all the bills are paid, making sure so when you're in that's why they want to crash the system. because when you put people in a situation where all they can do is think about the next 15 minutes and the next 15 minutes, they can't think about 5 years down the road. They can't stop and think about their individual liberty. They can't stop and think about what the government is doing to take those things away. They can't stop and think about what anything else, because now I'm in a situation where I'm just, oh God, please just let me get through the next 15 minutes. Well, who can do anything in that position? And one of the ways they did this was, Whitney, the meeting technique.
Oh, the Delphi technique. Yeah. So they already have a predetermined outcome that they present to you, and they make you think that you're part of the process, but really it's all just steered to whatever their outcome was in the beginning. They use that chaos to implement the change, that the change was always going to happen anyways.
Yeah. So you go to a meeting, they put something up like a whiteboard up, and they'll divide you up into groups, but this is what you have to think about. And then you have to think, and everybody I know who's watching this or will watch that later has been one of these meetings, and you're like, oh my God, that's what they were doing. You don't even realize. Well, we started out with this, but they're writing everything down that you're saying, right? But it all has to go back to the original thing that they invited you to the meeting to talk about in the first place. So, your city councils get Delphi'd all the time. I mean, every time your elected officials go to some meeting, they get Delphi'd. So and then they come back and then they're like, well, but this is what I've been told is, great. Or I worked this out in this meeting and they all agreed. No, they didn't agree. You got propagandized and Delphi techniqued into believing what you believe. You started out in one way when you came in, and you ended up in another way when you came out. And they're very happy about that. It's what they want.
Well, can we say education conferences, national education conferences, Jenny?
Bingo, because isn't that exactly what our friend at Visit was talking about the other day? Yep. That's how it works. All right. Well, we're at 1:41, and I know that Stephanie and Denise and Laurie and everybody else has other things to do, and I don't want to keep them on here anymore. But is there anything we need to do to round it out today other than to say we will get Julianne back on? Friday, we will have Ember Evans on talking about the voter rolls, and you're not going to want to miss that, because if we keep talking about machines and we talk about absentee ballots, but we're not talking about the rolls. So if you want to really hear something about that, Amber's got the info. She's got the 411, as we used to say. And so she'll be here on Friday. And then next Wednesday, Visit will be back. And she's put out another new article. So make sure you're watching that. And then on the 18th, next Friday, we're going to have a pre-recorded show, but I think you'll want to see it because it's all going to be about illegal immigration. So I think you'll want to be there or be square. So, Whitney, thank you for being on.
Yeah. Thank
we
you.
Love you.
Fun. Thank you. Love you too.
We're so glad you were with us. And again, everybody else, anything else before I get us out of here?
That's it.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us, everybody. We'll see you again on Friday. Bye.